Good afternoon, Alice.
Good afternoon, Therese.
It's a pleasure talking to you, and congratulations on winning
Thank you.
the Book of the Year from the ACP Excellence in Publishing Awards program. It's quite an honor to have you with us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You could have blown me over with a feather.
Well, you know, it was a surprise to me too, because I didn't expect the Book of the Year to come from one of the more academic categories. Right. Scripture, theology. I really expected it to come from basically one of the more pastoral categories, pastoral practical categories, like it has in the past. So it was quite a pleasure to see your title be the top rated one, because that's what it means, basically.
Yeah, thank you. It's really wonderful for me. I was certainly taken aback. I didn't even know that my commentary had been entered into the competition. So,
as happens frequently, yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book.
Okay.
So I know you gave some thought to a few questions that we put together. So let's see where they take us, and then if there's anything else, we'll see. We'll explore that as well. So let's start with a question about takeaways. What are the 3 takeaways that you'd like your readers to come away with after reading your book?
Well, I think the biggest one. Let me stop, because we've got an echo.
It's okay.
Okay, just live with it.
Yep, it's fine.
All right. Okay, the biggest takeaway, I think, is that the book of Proverbs is not a book of individual gems that people should memorize. People tend to have 1, 2, 3, a number of proverbs that they really like, and they will quote to you. That they're sort of maxims for living, and that's not bad. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. But there's a lot more to the book of Proverbs than individual sayings. That the way the book is structured, the sages who put it together wanted us. Oh dear. Maybe we should start again.
Keep going.
Okay. The sages wanted the readers, the audience, to ponder the various different sayings in context, so that you're not just thinking about one particular saying, but you're considering the various sayings as they have been put together in a group, so that when you do that, and the sayings sometimes are in tension with each other, sometimes even contradictory, it really forces you to think about, what is the meaning of life? What is justice? How do we deal with people who are poor? How do we deal with the very complicated issues? Whereas people tend to think of Proverbs as a kind of simple-minded book. Do this and everything's fine. But Proverbs is not really nearly so simple-minded as most people think it is, or at least I don't think that's the way the sages intended us to read it. And that was a surprise to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of, well, that I was struck in the description that I was given, that your publisher noted that you consider the book to be, as a structural whole, like you said about the sages, that they designed it in a specific way to make positive statements about women and to undercut negative ones. So I was really interested in why is that particularly meaningful for you today in this current cultural and religious moment. Thinking specifically about like the Me Too movement and all, in the awareness of that. We have so many women candidates for the 2020 election, which is such a new thing. And then in the religious side, we have a lot of dialogue going on. It started with Pope Francis about the role of women in the church, how important that is. This conversation about women and deacons. There's a lot going on right now. And I'm just wondering why do you, why is this particularly meaningful, looking at Proverbs as a book, and reading your commentary on that? Why is that particularly meaningful today?
Well, I think the interesting thing about Jewish culture down to the present is they never threw anything out. So in the book of Proverbs, you've got the negative proverbs about women. You know, don't if you have to live with a woman, it's like, you know, constantly running water that drives you mad. I'm paraphrasing this.
Like a dripping faucet.
Yeah, those negative proverbs are there. They don't throw those things out, but they are undercut by the way the sages put the book together with a new, we think, preface, the first 9 chapters, which have this one wonderful figure of woman or lady wisdom, however you want to describe her. And the last bit in chapter 31, which again is the strong woman, depending on how you want to, she's been translated many different ways, but the literal translation is the woman of strength, or in more colloquial English, the strong woman. She sometimes is translated as the competent woman, the good housewife, the many different things, but literally she's the strong woman. So by putting those 2 pieces on either side of the book, you encompass the negative stuff with some very strong positive stuff, which does tend to undercut the negatives.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't deny the reality of the negatives, but it sort of undercuts them. I think it's stronger than trying to erase them. It says, we've got this history, we're not going to deny it, but we're going to move forward with a new vision of, you know, what our society can be. Mm-hmm. And this was probably brought into final form after the exile, when the Jewish people had come back to Israel. It was a new world. Women had more rights, apparently. And this may have been a way of responding to that new situation in which women did have more rights. And I think it was a profoundly, if not subversive book, at least a book that asked people to consider different ways of looking at things, rather than a very conservative book the way some people have looked at. Mm-hmm. But of course, you can't prove that. It's a very you know, it's really depends on what you see in it. But I think they put it out there for people to look at and to say, what do you see here? Let's look at the way things are, rather than just telling people how they are. Let's look at how they are, and you decide after you've weighed all of this stuff that we're putting out. But they I think subtly tilted the balance toward a positive view of women.
That's fascinating. Given all that, who do you think would particularly benefit from reading this book? Obviously, scholars, but outside of that kind of more rarefied group of folks, no offense, I hope, yeah. But you know, it's a book that's out there, and obviously I'm sure the publisher would like more people to see it. Yeah. And just the way you describe it, and the way in which it's written, and the way it's structured, who would you hope would pick up this book, and then open the Bible to the book of Proverbs, and really dive in a way that they might not have otherwise thought to do so?
Right. Well, I've done a lot of adult education in churches over the years. Mm-hmm. And so I can easily see this book being used as a kind of guidebook for adult study groups. Because Proverbs, like many books of the Bible, there's a treasure house there, but most people, unless they have someone or something to guide them, will have a hard time, you know, unearthing the treasures that are there. Mm-hmm. And I think also many of us find studying with a group more satisfactory than just trying to do it by ourselves, because we need other people in the group to bounce ideas off of. And by the very nature of Proverbs, where all the Proverbs are in the context of other Proverbs and are intended, I think, to be read in context. If you read it in context of a group, that makes it all the richer, I think. So that's where I would see it mostly, in some sort of group study where people can really think about, what is the meaning of life, and how do we deal with justice, and what about the poor, and all those questions which are raised. Of course, they're raised in the ancient context, but it's not hard to move that context into our own day. It's really, you could easily do that. It's just not that hard.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. As you were working on this book, what were some of the major influences on you in shaping your approach to this work?
Well, I'd say two things. The broad influence, over many years, is my community. And by my community, I mean really Howard University School of Divinity, where I came to study in 1971 to where I got my Master of Divinity, and then where since 1990 I've been in the faculty. Making the decision to go to Howard when I was 20 years old was a life-transforming experience. And I had no idea when I did it, how life-transforming it was going to be. 13 of the what are called contributing voices in this volume are former students.
Oh.
And each one of those has a perspective that we add to Proverbs, which adds to the total effect. But over the years, interacting with the other faculty at the Divinity School and all the many students have shaped me more probably than all the scholarship that I've received. So that's the broad answer. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm uncomfortable with the word feminist, because it smacks too much of white privilege. So I say in there, even though probably by most definitions I'm a feminist, I'm uncomfortable with the word, and I feel more like I want to say that I'm doing this from a gender-sensitive perspective, which doesn't smack of that quite as much. But then there are also, of all the books that I read in Proverbs, there are two that I do need to lift up, and they're both men, European men. Peter Hatton's 2008 Contradiction in the Book of Proverbs, and then Grapes of Gold, Set in Silver by New Time. Both of those books, both of those scholars focused on the way the contradictions in Proverbs force the reader to look at the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And those books were what made me start looking at the bigger picture. So I need to acknowledge their influence on me from a scholarly point of view.
That's great. So any last thoughts you'd want to share with folks on the book, on your obviously interest and love for this particular book of the Bible? Again, how much I learned from the process. When I started this, I'd never written commentary. I'd only written one article in Proverbs. Oh. So I went into it with an open mind. And I would just ask readers, if you're interested in something that you haven't necessarily thought about or done before, take a look. There's a lot there. Thank you so much, Alice. This is great. Appreciate your time.